Hi all, Mary Bulger here, Naturalist with Iowa County Conservation, and I want to welcome you to one of our virtual wild edible series. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the wild plum again, and also we are going to be making something, a really nice tasty tart treat, the Wild Plum Fruit Leather. So it's a really simple, easy thing to make, and the only ingredient you need are wild plums here. There's an option of adding some honey if you're not such a fan of the tartness of the wild plums, but again, that's an option for you here. So what I'm going to do is kind of go over the materials that you're going to need, and then I'll go through the process here, and we'll make get our wild plum fruit leather started. It's kind of a long dehydration process in a food dehydrator, so we won't finish it of course today, but I do have some sample examples that I made previously, so you can kind of see what it looks like. So I'm going to pick up my camera here, and we're just going to kind of take a look at what you're going to need here for what we're going to make today. So again, I have some wild plums, and these are ripe wild plums. I put them through the freezing process because then they're easy to take the pits out and then also the skin off. So we'll do that in just a moment here. And then you're just going to need a few different kitchen tools. So a big serving spoon is handy. I have some gloves for taking the pits out and also the skins off. A big wooden spoon for a little bit of mixing, a measuring cup. I have a half one here because we are going to need to use a little blender. Now I have my little bullet blender here again today, but you can also use a bigger blender if you like. You also will need some parchment paper to put down to make the fruit leather for the to put in the dehydrator here. Now this food dehydrator is an older model one, but it works really great. You are going to need one of these to make this fruit leather. Now with this food dehydrator, it took about 9 hours to kind of dehydrate what we're going to be doing. So, and every dehydrator might be a little bit different. So you just want to check your instructions to see what you have your model will take. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our taking the pulp out of our wild plums here. Now, if you remember last time we did wild plums again and we made a wild plum sauce, there are a couple different methods you can use. The reason you want to take the skins out and then of course the pits out, you don't want to use those, but the skins have tannins in them, and so that's what makes the wild plums taste really bitter. And inside the pulp is a little bit sweeter. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. Last time I baked those wild plums and then they split open and then it just kind of squeezed out the pulp on the inside. But this method I found I like a little bit better. It's a little bit easier because what you do is you take these wild plums. Again, this is what color they are. They're kind of dark purple when they are ripe. When they are just growing, they're green and then they turn to yellow. But the purple is where you want to harvest them. And so I use the freezing method this time to take the pulp out, and you freeze them until they're frozen solid, and then you can take them out of the freezer and thaw them, and then they just kind of pop right open. Let's see if I can open this up without making a big mess here, just to kind of demonstrate. I have my gloves on. You don't have to wear gloves, but it's a little bit cleaner to do that. Again, this is a fun thing for kids to do. There we go. So what I'm doing is I'm just, and the skin, you take that skin, you kind of set it to the side, and then there's the flesh of the inside of the wild plum. And then you just want to take out your pit. It has a small pit right there, and you want to set that to the side. the pits and the skins you can either put into the compost, or you can, with the pits, you can maybe try to propagate your own wild plums and have a little, some in your own yard or on your own property. So again, I'm gonna kind of demonstrate here. So again, these were frozen, and then I just give them a little hole, give a little squeeze, and that flesh comes right out of there. Set my skin to the side, and I'm gonna take my pit and put that to the side there, and then I have the rest of this flesh, and that's what we're gonna use to make our wild plum fruit leather today. And so I actually have done quite a bit of this already. I did a little bit of prep here, and I have a nice container of my wild plum flesh. And so I'm gonna take these off, set this to the side, and show you what I have. The really nice thing about this wild plum fruit leather is, or the wild plum flesh actually, is you can take this, I have a whole big container here, and then you can put it in the freezer and preserve it. Wild plums are not in fruit anymore. You probably can't find too many of them out there anymore, but they freeze really well. So I did that about 2 weeks ago. Now we have all this to make our wild plum fruit leather. Now at this point, we want to, it's pretty thick. I would say it's about the consistency of a really thick applesauce. And you want it to be a little bit thinner, and you want to break up some of those fleshy parts of it. And so that's why we're going to put it in the blender. And again, I have my little bullet blender here, but a larger blender will work just as well. And I'm going to spoon mine in here. And remember that this is a tart fruit, even sometimes a bit bitter. So some people like to sweeten this with a little bit of honey, and that is an option. If you like tart things, you don't have to, but if you do, then you can use that honey to sweeten it up a little bit. I'm gonna leave the honey out this time. I've tried it both ways. The last time I made it, I put some honey in there. All right, so I'm not gonna fill mine quite all the way full, because again, this is pretty thick stuff. And I'm gonna put my lid on here. Now, when it comes to the thickness, you might have to, if it's really thick, add a little bit of water if your blender's having a little bit of trouble, if you have a little bullet blender like this one. But it's about to get really loud here, so plug your ears. Check out and see what that consistency is here. So it's not quite as thick, and I think this is a pretty good consistency. I didn't add any water, but it's easy to spread, and all of those kind of fleshy chunks are broken up, and that's what you want to have it at for to spread on your parchment paper for the to make the fruit leather. So I just have a big sheet of parchment paper right here, and with most food dehydrators are pretty similar, and they have, I'll turn my camera here, they have multiple trays that you kind of stack on top of each other to dry all kinds of things. They have lots of little holes. Now if you were to put the kind of mixture that we have right here on your food dehydrator tray, it would probably leak right through and leak down onto all the other trays. And so that wouldn't be very handy for you. So you want to use parchment paper. And one easy way to kind of, it's kind of a big circular shape, but what I did is I just took a pencil and I traced the inside circle. And the outside circle, and then you made your kind of shape right there that you can use as a template for your food dehydrator here. And you know one thing I forgot today? Some scissors. So excuse me one moment. I gotta go grab some scissors. Here we go. So then you just want to cut out your template. You can cut a little bit on the end. It doesn't need to be exactly it needs to be just a little bit smaller than the tray there in the food dehydrator. Cut our center piece out too here, so we can spread our mixture, our pulp mixture on our tray. All right, so here we have a little template here. I'm gonna set that on the middle here, down in there, and now your mixture. So let me turn my camera just a little bit further down so you can kind of maybe see a little bit better. There we go. So what I'm gonna do now is take my Wild Plum Pulp mixture, and I'm just going to kind of spread it out evenly here. And I've found with my my bullet blender, the amount that I put in here, I filled it up maybe about 3/4, maybe a little bit more. But that is just the perfect amount to spread for these size trays that we have right here. All right, so I got some spoonfuls here of my mixture, and then I'm just going to spread it out as evenly as I can. On the recipe, it recommends about a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch. And what you want to remember is the thicker it is, the longer it is going to take to dehydrate. So that's why it's important to try to get it spread as evenly as possible. There we go. All right, so here's my one tray. I'm just going to do kind of one demonstration tray here. When you're using the food dehydrator, you can take out, if you're only doing one tray, you can take out those other trays and set it right down on the bottom there. Set your cover on. And with this food dehydrator, it doesn't have any settings or an on-off switch. It just gets plugged in the wall here. And it starts the dehydration process. So what it's doing is it's forcing warm air down from the bottom and slowly taking all the moisture out of the food dehydrator. So again, with this one, it took about 9 hours for it to fully dehydrate. But I do have an example here that I'm going to show you. With the my fruit leather that I made here, I just kind of cut it into little pieces, like a little piece of pizza, or you could cut it into strips. Another fun thing that you could do with your kids is you can take kind of those metal edged cookie cutters, and then you could cut out different shapes, animals, plants, different things like that. Oh, let's see, I have a comment on my film. Oh, it's from my mom. She says, "Hi, Mary." Hi, Mom. Thanks for watching. So with the parchment paper, again, it is really just quick and easy to kind of peel off there usually. This one kind of ripped. And then what you do is you just peel that parchment paper off there and ready to eat. Now, this one is a little bit, like I said, of a tart flavor. If you don't like that tartness so much, you can add that honey to your mixture before you put it, blend it up and mix it up like that. So if you joined us last time, I just talked a little bit about the American plum, or the wild American plum here. And so I'm just going to go over a few of those fun facts again. just a little bit of information about them, so you can learn a little bit more about them. So the American plum is a shrub-like tree. So it looks like a big bushy shrub, but they can get fairly large, sometimes up to 10 feet tall and wide. Now, they fruit in the late to early fall. And remember those wild plums? So I'll have a few examples right here. When they're very small, they're only about a ½ inch in diameter, which is a lot smaller than your wild plum that you might, or a regular cultivated plum that you might find in the grocery store. So a lot smaller. And they are dark purple when they're ripe, but they are lighter yellow when they are starting to ripen, and then green when they're growing. And so they are native all over here, United States, and they can be found in habitats like woodland edges or river banks, or even on the edges of prairies. And they like part shade to full sun. And so they are very adaptable though, and you can find them in a lot of different habitats. And again, their root structure is very dense, and sometimes they are planted for erosion control. So they also, not a lot of people know about those tiny little wild plums, but they are great wildlife habitats. So they provide shelter for different types of wildlife, and they also provide a lot of food. There are many animals that will take advantage of all of those wild plums, because there can be hundreds on one shrubby plant. So things like deer and squirrels and chipmunks to all different kinds of birds will love to eat the wild plum. So if you want to attract a little bit more wildlife to your yard and get a tasty edible treat for you too, you can plant a wild plum. Now you just have to get those before the wildlife does, if you have those there. So you can eat them as a fresh fruit snack like we have here, or you can cook with them. Some people make jams and jellies with them. You can make sauces like we did the last time. You can make fruit leather like we are today, or some people even use them to make wine. So lots of different things that you can make with those wild plums. And they are, again, a little bit tart. And the thing that causes that tartness or that bitterness is a chemical called tannins in them, which is mostly found in the skin there of the fruit. So by removing that skin, you are making sure that you're not getting as much of that bitter taste. And also picking them when they're ripe helps quite a lot too. So they have a lot of different vitamins and minerals that are, so they're really nutritious. Vitamin A and beta carotene and phosphorus you can find in the wild plums. And they're also known to help with digestion. So lots of different fun facts about the wild plum. And that is all I have for you for today. I want to thank you very much for joining me today. If you have any requests for virtual wild edibles series, our series here, please put those in the comments or send us a message. We'd be happy to try some different things for you here. We're going to try to continue to do this series as long as we can, but the growing season, of course, will end pretty soon in our foraging season, so we'll see what we can do throughout the winter. Oh, let's see. I have a question here. So what color is the blossom in the spring for wild plums? They're white colored blossoms. So any other questions or anything you'd like to know or requests for our virtual wild edible series, please put those in the comments or send us a message. I want to thank you very much again for watching. make sure that you get outdoors this weekend. It is going to be a little bit chilly, but those fall colors are just starting. I've been seeing some fall mushrooms out there too, so you can go maybe on a hike, look at the fall colors that are starting, and look for some mushrooms out there. So thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.